Please talk.
Okay, so I'm turning my mic on. Can you all hear me? Yep. Excellent. Yell at them if it doesn't work. Don't yell at me, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so I want to make this as interactive as possible. Please yell out, participate, talk to me, ask questions. If I've got something totally wrong, tell me, I'm cool with that. Writing is like coding, very rarely black and white. There's lots of opinions involved. I will put commas in certain places that you would never dream of putting them, and vice versa. So please, argue, converse. This is a tutorial, not a talk. So. Okay, so the first half, so I think we just decided up until about 4:30 or so, I do want to go through some background stuff. Have most of you been to one of my tech writing talks in the past? No? Oh, wow. Cool. Okay, so in that case, I am going to actually rehash a fair bit of stuff that I've spoken about generally related to tech writing in the past. So if you've heard it before, please feel free to check your email or something. So the first thing I want to talk about is why is writing well important, and this is something I like to touch on in every talk, because writing is one of those things where it's like public speaking, I guess. It's one of those things where we go, oh, I can't stand writing, I hate it, it's awful, I have to do it, and I really wish I didn't. Same as public speaking. You get that, oh, well, could you stand up in front of a group and talk to them about it? Oh no, public speaking is terrible, I hate it. So writing is much the same. There are obviously people who do writing and do writing quite well. There are people who don't feel that fear. Just like there are people who do public speaking and don't feel that fear. For the record, I feel that fear. So why is writing well important? Writing well is important in a technical sense, mostly because all writing is marketing. It's that simple. Yes, I do have a marketing degree as well as a couple of others. One thing my marketing degree taught me is that marketing is everywhere, even when you don't think of it as marketing. A lot of the stuff that we read, and anyone who's at the keynote this morning would learn that marketing is really important in lots of different ways, even just in the way we interact with each other on a one-to-one level. It's important that we get messages across. That's what writing is all about. It's about getting messages across. It's about making sure that we're selling ourselves, we're selling our products, and we're selling them in the best possible light. We want people to be enthusiastic and think positively about the things that we're writing about. Even if you're writing a novel, you still want people to get to the end of it and go, hey, that Lana Brindley, she's a great writer. I'm going to go and buy another book. Well, yeah, the next one. Please, write the next in the series. Not that I write fiction, but anyway. The other main reason why, especially tech writing, doing it well is important, is because if you look like an idiot in the way you write, people will probably think you're an idiot. If you have spelling mistakes, it is very fashionable at the moment to be a grammar Nazi. You will notice it all over Twitter. If you spell something wrong on Twitter, intentionally or otherwise, people will jump on you, and next thing you know, you're in the middle of a flame fest.
And usually dumb Americans don't know how to spell properly.
Exactly. Tell me about it. I'd write in E and US all day long. And then I go and write in real English afterwards. But yeah, so if you're writing stuff and you spell something incorrectly, or you use grammar in a bad way, or you fail to use grammar completely, or something like that, then people will judge you. I'm sorry, they will. They will go, man, that guy can't even string a sentence together. How stupid is he? Most of the case, it's not that you're failing to string a sentence together properly because you're stupid. It's mostly because you're busy, or you just don't know how to do it. You don't have the education, or you just didn't have time to think about it, or whatever. I know I've done it. You send off text messages and you read them later and you go, whoa, that was a bit out there. Okay, so basically, yeah, if you look like an idiot in your writing, people are probably going to think you're an idiot. It's probably nicer to have people not think we're stupid. Another good reason for writing well is because extracting information from your head means that other people don't have to. If you write something down, you write it well, and it's an effective piece of documentation, especially if you're documenting code or something like that, then it's much nicer than having 700 emails in your inbox in the morning going, I don't understand how to work this. It's pretty basic. If you extract the information from your head in a consumable way for other people, then they won't have to do it for you. Pretty simple. And the single biggest thing, the one that I always talk about when I get to this point, is it will reduce support calls. Same thing as the 700 emails. If you're working for a larger company, you've got a call center or whatever, if you have good documentation, you will have less support calls, the support team will hate you less, and your users will like you more. Works well. Okay, so anything further that people would like to go on about in terms of writing well? Comments, questions?
Writing well? I mean,
writing well was good.
Why you do it?
Why you write well.
We're happy with that.
Yeah, all makes sense. Cool, everyone's convinced, everyone is absolutely convinced that we need to write and we need to write well. Yes? Excellent. If you don't believe that, maybe you shouldn't be here. Maybe you should be here, but I'm probably not going to harp on and try and convince you any more than I already have. Okay, so I want to talk about what tech writers actually do. And I know we had a question earlier about what does tech writing actually consist of. So we might start there. Does somebody want to start throwing some ideas at me about what tech writing actually is? What is a document that is considered technically written? Go for it. A user manual?
Anything written in LaTeX.
That could also be a thesis.
Anything written in LaTeX is my first love, by the way. That was the first one I learnt. So I write in XML these days because I have to, but...
Use a different pen that way.
Is that one hard to read?
Yeah.
I'll go for traditional black, shall I?
It's not very hard.
I don't always. Better?
Yes, thank you.
User guide. Anything in LaTeX? What else?
Translating acronyms into English.
So something like a reference guide?
No, more something that is written in English where it's describing something that the writer of it would only use acronyms to describe.
I think we can class that under user guide.
I'm going to say online help too.
Yep, online help, absolutely.
Walkthroughs or step-by-step guides.
Yep,
Release notes.
absolutely. Well done.
Ramen.
Yes. See, now you're coming faster than I can write. This is good.
Comment all of code.
Comments and code. Thank you for saying that.
Java docs.
Javadoc, PyDoc, all those.
Proposals.
Yes.
Functional specifications. Resource specs.
Functional specs. Also design specs.
System requirements. Technical fiction.
System requirements.
Executive summaries.
That's part of a larger doc. What about
I actually disagree with that one.
Mm?
Because I'm thinking of that would be, you know, a quick abstract of a document that opens it up to a less technical audience than the main body of the document, which is a slightly different writing style than...
True, it is a different writing style. I'll agree with that. I've completely forgotten what I was about to write up there, though. Exec summary? Is that the word? Is that the right? What about box text? The stuff on the actual product. Packaging, yeah. And also,
Journal articles.
yep,
Dialogues.
and blogs. Yeah, marketing material, the stuff that goes in the box, the stuff that you hand out at trade shows, that kind of stuff. That's all important too.
Interface specifications.
Yep. Yeah, good one.
I don't have design docs
Design specs?
there. Design docs, not specs, but yeah.
Same thing.
Specs design.
We can put it.
The UI text for
Yes, very much so. Because remember, a lot of them get translated to...
DR guides?
Sorry?
DR guides?
DR guides.
Disaster recovery management?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Acronym hell.
It's called the airline safety card.
We might leave it at that. I think I've made the point anyway. Basically, if it has writing on it, it is tech docs, essentially. If it is something that you do that is work-related, is related to code, it is related to products, and it has writing on it, then it is tech writing. Every single word you use in your job every single day is tech writing. Not all of it's written by tech writers. Quite a lot of it is written by you, which is, of course, why you're here.
What isn't tech writing?
What isn't tech writing? Fiction?
Writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and functional or design specs may be fiction.
I can tell you there is fiction in these things too, because I've written it. there is fiction in quite a lot of it. Yeah, I mean, Harry Potter, not tech writing.
But what we've written there, the stuff on the back of the book is.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about exec summaries, the exec summary is part of it, the introduction is part of it, the conclusion is part of it, the talk is part of it, the index is part of it. It's all got to have that information design wrapped around it, and it is great if you can have a qualified tech writer actually sit down and look at that and assist you with it. Okay, so what do tech writers actually do? We do this, obviously. Before we get to that point,
Communicate with those whose stuff we're supposed to document.
absolutely. The way I was going to put that is we have to extract stuff out of people's heads.
Insert it into other people.
Exactly. It's almost like a translation job. It's extracting it out of the engineer's head, turning it into English, and then inserting it back into other people's heads. Sorry, I mean...
No, you said what you meant.
Yeah, I did.
Argue about style.
And yes, we do a lot of arguing about style. That comes a little later. So we extract the information out of people's heads. We then organise that information into logical units. These days we're actually organising it into little discrete units of information that we call topics. I'll hit on that a little bit later. But yes, we then do basically what we refer to as information design. We sit down and work out what this information is actually going to look like. Which one of these things are we actually going to write? You know, preferably all of the above, but sometimes it's not feasible. So we decide what kind of documents we're going to write. We work out how that document is going to look, what information is going to go in there, and of course a lot of that comes with audience analysis and that kind of stuff. We work out who's actually going to be reading it, how they're going to be approaching the document. Of course, once we've done all that, we write, edit, write, edit, write, edit, edit a little bit more, and argue over style. That's where the arguing happens. And sit there and discuss whether file system should be hyphenated or not ad infinitum. And we then, of course, once it's out, we maintain an update. So fairly basic process. It starts right back at that extracting information part though. To me, I think that's the hardest part, is actually finding that information in the first place. The rest of it I'm qualified for, and that's just my day job, that's what I do all day long. The extracting the information requires people skills, not education skills. It's not something you can learn in a university. So I'd like to introduce at this point the concept of purpose, audience, delivery. There are three things that every tech writer needs to know and needs to live and die by. Purpose, audience, and delivery are those three things. I will go on and on and on about this today. So I'm going to write it up so that you don't forget. So, purpose. This is the purpose of your document. Why does your document exist? What problem does it solve? Why do you have it? If you can't answer that question, why the hell are you writing the thing? Don't bother. If it doesn't have a purpose, it shouldn't exist. Easy. Audience. Possibly the most important of the three. Who's going to be reading it? How are they going to be approaching it? Don't just think about, it's very easy to categorize our audience into 25 to 45-year-old educated white male, possibly located in the northern hemisphere in the United States, speaks US English. You know, it's easy to categorize our main portion of the audience. Did you have something you want to say? No? Sorry?
Yeah, that was mine, a communication fail, sorry.
That's okay, we're all good at those. Okay, so I mean it's fairly easy to say yes, you've got this target demographic. We're used to dealing with demographics, we deal with demographics every day. We all understand what our own personal demographic is and how we fit into the world like that. What might be more difficult is thinking about things like, when your audience reads this document, what situation are they in? Are they in a light room? Are they in a dark room? Is it noisy? Have they just come out of a meeting with their boss where they think they might get fired? Are they particularly stressed out about something? Are they coming to your document because they've just spent 3 days working out how to configure ProcMail, and now they're getting to the point where they're going to tear their hair out and or lose their job if they don't find the answer? Why are they approaching your document? What environment are they approaching your document in? Do they have 3 screaming kids running around at their feet at the time when they're trying to understand this stuff? You can't assume that they're going to be in a sterile, quiet environment with a mindset that is necessarily open to receiving this information. People approach documentation in all sorts of different ways. A classic example that I've used a lot is a story from Joanne Haycoss, who wrote a very good style guide, which I think I didn't bring her one, oops. I brought most of the others. Okay, so Joanne Haycoss was, when her group was commissioned to work on a bit of a problem. The guys who work up the telegraph poles had a situation where they needed to get some documentation done. A team had come in, not Joanne's team, another team had come in, had written this fantastic manual, it was ring bound, and it was about this thick, came in a few volumes. Of course, these guys are working up telephone poles. They're at the top of a telephone pole. I'll say that again. They're at the top of a telephone pole. They can't take something like this with them. Because when you're at the top of a telephone pole, it's kind of important that one hand's hanging on and the other hand's doing something. You don't have any hands left. You can't stick it in your back pocket. Okay? Joanne Haycoss's team came in to solve that problem. Eventually they went to an electronic format that they could carry on smartphones. So it was a case of, they considered the audience in terms of education level. The book was well written. They just hadn't considered the actual environment that they were using it in. So the third one, I've lost my pen. Third one is delivery. And this is all very interrelated, of course. How are you going to deliver this information to this audience? What is the best way to deliver that information? Like the Joanne Haycoss story, it's not always the way you think first. Sometimes paper-based doesn't work. Similar case in Red Hat, we produce all our documents in EPUB format. That's to help with a lot of our guys who go out on site. If anyone's seen the RHEL deployment guide, it's a frightening document. You don't want to print that damn thing out. Sometimes having internet connectivity or whatever can be awkward, difficult, or impossible in the case of defence organisations. It can be a lot easier for them to take that document electronically, and that is the main reason why Red Hat produce EPUB documents. So it's all about delivery. So I think I've probably crapped on enough about that. I will come back to that. So I want to talk very briefly about how writing projects are organised. This is one of the main things I do at Red Hat, is talk about process. I'm going to start rubbing some of these off. I hope nobody minds. I think we've made the point. So there are 2 main models that we use currently. The traditional one is just your standard waterfall style model. It's exactly the same as waterfall style engineering. Anyone not understand what I mean when I say waterfall? Okay, so the idea with waterfall is we take one step, we flow into the next. It's quite linear. So we start with an information plan. This takes up about 10% of the project. So if you have 100 working days on the project, 10 days of those are going to be spent on planning. That's a lot. But it's also important because that's where you work out this. That's where this comes into play, and sometimes that's not as straightforward as it seems. Sometimes it does take some analysis. That's where you're doing your audience analysis, where you're deciding what you're going to deliver, how you're going to deliver it, what the finished thing's going to look like. And that's so that you can go back to your engineering managers and go, right, I've done my analysis because I am a very professional technical writer, and this is what my analysis has resulted in. This is what I'm going to be delivering with you. So that's your info plan. After that, do the content spec, which takes up, what is it, 20? You'd think I'd know this by now. Okay, so the content specification, this is where the extraction from the head happens. This is what does the chapter index look like, develop the talk, work out what information is going to go into each chapter, and most of all, work out where you're going to get that information. Whose head are you going to extract it out of? Does it exist in a wiki? Are you going to have to go and interview some engineer for weeks on end? Because sometimes it can take time. Where's that engineer located? Is it going to have to be on email? Is there existing docs? Has somebody done something wonderful like taken notes as they've been working on a piece of paper that they can send you? Really, it comes down to even scratched notes are good. Again, code comments. That came up earlier. If there are comments in the code, where do I get the source code? Can I download it? How can I extract those comments out? Can I use PyDoc or something like that to extract it out? Where is this information going to come from? And my battery's dying on my tablet. Okay, so of course then comes the important part. This takes up 50% of the project, as it should. You might be surprised that that number is as low as it is, actually. But 50% of the project, that really is where we shut the door. We take the information plan, so this is the delivery, we take the talk, we go and grab that information that we've extracted from people's heads, and we sit down and we write the damn thing. It's that simple. We then go into translation, if we're doing it, and launch gets wrapped up in this too. Of course, in the days of dead tree books, and the actual launch was remarkably difficult, and it was a case of going out and printing things and proofreading galleys and that kind of stuff. We don't do that anymore, obviously. It's more or less you push the big red button and off it goes out into cyberspace, and that's cool. Translation can take time, that's why it takes 19%. The launch just tends to get lumped in with that. So in Red Hat we translate into 24 languages? I think it's around that. Obviously not all books go into all languages, depends on the markets we're going into, depends what resources we've got available, what translators are actually able to be working on stuff. And the final 1%, for those of you who've done your maths, or if I've done my maths correctly, is the review. So that's after it all goes out, we all sit around, we pat each other on the back, say, yeah, was it good for you? It was great for me. And, or it sucked, how are we going to fix that? So it's just a little thing at the end, but it is very important. Yes?
Out of those 50% that are writing, in your experience, how much is actually creating new stuff, and how much is editing and polishing the stuff that you've written?
Depends on the document.
Of course it does, but I'm asking you, like, on your personal experience, on average, you've written a few of these.
I have. Okay, so for the purpose of the recording, how much is new stuff versus editing old stuff? I couldn't even say personally.
It's editing the new stuff as well.
Oh, okay, so editing, depending on the team you're working on, I like to put it through, we do a lot of editing in Red Hat. I like to put it through at least a technical review and at least a QE review. So it goes to quality, this is a Red Hatism, we call it QE, quality engineering, not quality assurance, because we like to be different. So when we send it through to quality engineering, they look at technical review. When we send it to technical review, we actually send it back to our subject matter experts. They're the people we've extracted the information out of their heads. So basically it's a way of saying, I got this information out of your head and I wrote it all down. Can you please make sure that what I wrote down is actually what you intended to give me? Because that you do get obviously errors there because we're human and communication is hard. So we do a tech review. Depending on the team, again, depending on how close the relationship is, how well you work with that team, sometimes I leave it just a week, especially if it's a short project. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. Sometimes it's a month. It depends how long I'm able to leave it with them. I will leave it with them for as long as possible because you'll get to a wider audience, you'll get more reviews. But yeah, the latest project I've worked on is a big project. It's been in the pipeline for about 18 months. It's not quite finished yet. And I think I ended up leaving it with them for 5 weeks. But then there's another project that I've been working on with Alison, that short project, it's only been going for about 6 weeks. I think we're down to about 4 days for a review. So it's really project independent. It's kind of difficult to say it's this much time. That is decided, incidentally. How much time will go into editing is decided back in the information plan. That's when we work out our dates. So we do decide that ahead of time and then do our best to stick to it, obviously. Obviously, of course, there's the editing that you do on your own too. As you write, you read back each chapter. And I will talk a bit more about editing when we get into the next section. But this is your basic waterfall model. It's the same thing that tech writers have been doing for 1 million years. Nothing's really changed. It's, you will see variations of the waterfall model. This is my particular waterfall model I use based off the Joanne Haykoss one that I was mentioning earlier. It's very, very good. It works. It's fantastic. However, the world's changing. Engineers don't tend to develop in a waterfall type way anymore. And now we have this wonderful thing we like to call agile. Yay! You're waiting for it, weren't you? Okay. So this is our waterfall. I don't think I can draw a waterfall. There we go. Rocks. Cool. Pool of water. Okay, cool. So now we have agile. Yay, it's person dancing. So we're all agile. Agile's cool. So I had a really interesting task ahead of me. It was probably first set down 2 or 3 years ago when some of our Red Hat engineering teams started going to more agile processes, and we had project managers, engineering project managers going, I don't think this thing's going to work anymore because we're kind of not doing that. Of course, the big problem if you're trying to document agile projects is that you either document too soon and it all ends up being wrong, or you document too late and you end up having to launch with no documentation. I don't feel either of those is appropriate, obviously. We document inadequately all the time.
Enough to sort of give enough of an idea that whatever's going to change a little bit later isn't too bad.
Yes, and that is actually a fairly decent strategy. So I keep on forgetting I have to repeat the question. So the question was about documenting good enough, essentially. And at least one of the projects that we've got actually using agile documentation in Red Hat now is on a 2-week sprint. It's web-based, so they do a release at the end of every 2, it's a soft release at the end of every 2 weeks. And their poor documentation team, the guy who's heading up the documentation team has been doing documentation for, I don't know, forever, million years. And the poor guy is melting down because he has to document, he has to write something and release it in 2 weeks. He finds out what that thing is, 2 weeks later he has to have it out the door. And he's had to have a mental shift in the way he thinks about documentation in terms of it has to be good enough. Well, you do have to start, as writers, we tend to like to have control over our babies that we put out into the world. And so you do have to relinquish a little bit of that control and say, it's okay, go out into the world and walk, and if there is a problem, I will come back and I will fix you later. This is where bug reporting comes in, obviously. So it is a case of, yes, you will come back and review things later on. You do have to sort of get used to the idea that things are going to be good enough, they're not always going to be perfect. In the real world, it's never perfect anyway. Whether you're working in a waterfall model or not, you're probably never going to get perfect documentation on the first go anyway. Yep.
If it helps your person who's having a meltdown, perhaps he or she should consider that the agile methodology is really thousands of little waterfalls.
Yes, it is, and that's exactly the language I've used with him.
That's true. It's really an entire waterfall, but it only captures a small part of it.
Absolutely. And when I started having to try and work out a plan for agile documentation, of course my first thing was to go and hit the university library. I was studying for my tech writing degree. I just finished it last year, actually. Thank you. I'm finally qualified to do what I do. So I was at the university. I was working on an assignment down at the ANU library, and I'm going, oh, that's all right, I'm here. I'll start pulling out some agile textbooks and see if I can find some really good you know, models to work around, and they don't exist. That's really all I can say. The Agile engineering textbooks all basically say get someone else to do your documentation. Documentation for Agile is hard. That's cool, I appreciate that. It's just I'm the one who has to do it. While it would be really nice to turn around and say, hey Alison, would you mind doing that documentation for me? It's kind of hard. I can't, so it doesn't really help with what I was trying to do. So then of course I went to the documentation textbooks to try and find, and everything is just an iteration of this. Sometimes they're 5 steps, sometimes they're 6 steps, sometimes they're 8 or 9 or 12 steps. I've seen at least one that had 3 steps, which I thought was probably a little short. But they're all waterfall. So I did find one that was almost likely, and then I realized it was all about design. They'd taken this part and had completely ignored the rest. The actual writing happened in about a 2-week sprint at the end. And I'm like, not quite appropriate. So what I ended up doing is essentially, with the help of a lot of my colleagues, writing a new model, which I won't put up in its entirety because it's not entirely appropriate. It's not entirely pertinent to what we're actually going to be working on today. But basically, I took the information plan and the content spec and I condensed them down a little bit, and then I put in a series of iterations in the middle. So we basically do an info plan of some description at the beginning. It's quite short. We talk in fairly general terms about what kind of book we're going to produce, what kind of information is going to go in it, and that kind of stuff. But we also leave that fairly open-ended. A lot of that gets decided later on. So we then go into a series of sprints, whatever. You know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever they are. One of our Agile teams works on 2 weeks. That's the one I was just telling you about, and they do a soft release at the end of every one. The team I'm working on at the moment is doing 3 weeks, but they do a hard release at the end of a series of iterations. So it's almost waterfall, it's almost agile, it's a bit in between. It's kind of funky. So we do a series of iterations. At the beginning of each iteration, we say, right, what are we writing in this iteration? We sit down and write it. We put it out on tech review for maybe a couple of days, possibly a week, depends how much time we've got in the sprint. And then we come back up to the next one. Right, okay, what are we doing in the next iteration? And so we basically go through in sprints, essentially. We have scrum meetings and all the rest of it because we like to be cool and funky and stick with the program. And we get to the point where, okay, now we've got all this information, and we keep it in this discrete units that I was talking about earlier, and we have a massive book full of discrete units of information. It's not actually an end user document yet. We then get to the end and we say, what are we going to, how are we going to deliver this? Oh, it goes all smudgy. So we say then, okay, we're going to have a user guide, we're going to have an install guide, we might have a reference guide. So we can then take these discrete topics of information that we've been writing through the iterations, say, right, we'll take this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, dump it all down into a book, and hey presto, we have a book. This is cool. And we've had to develop new workflows, we've had to develop new tools. Everything changes when you start writing like this. It's not like the old days where a writer could go and spend 50% of the project in a dark room with a pencil. You just can't work that way anymore. I know, it's disappointing. I feel like I've lost a part of me. I had to throw my pencils away. But yeah, so we do the iterations, we go into how we're going to deliver it. We then deliver those, we actually create those books out of the information, which is like choosing from a menu. It really is like going to a restaurant and saying, right, I'll have that entree, that main course, and that dessert, here's my book. We then deliver the books, we send them through a final round of technical review, a final round of quality assurance review. Those are the books that then get translated. So we have review, translation, publication, and then the final review, exactly the same as the waterfall. I should use the word edit there. So this is interesting, and there's a whole other talk in here, but I'm going to try not to go too in depth with you all because it's not really why we're here. It's just interesting. So I find it interesting. I've been living and breathing agile documentation for nearly 2 years now. Okay, so now I want to actually get into, we're at 4:15. I wanted to start writing around about past, if we can, actually start working on some editing. So, first of all, who needs something to work on? Who has nothing to work on? 3, 4, okay. My daughter actually came along with me, and then at the last minute decided she wanted to sit in the parents' room with the babies instead. So we might send a few of these around. These are, if you just want to pass it back, take one if you need something to edit. Since my willing helper isn't here. Oh, I think I've got a couple more. Just grab one if you need something to edit. I also have red pens for people who prefer to work on paper.
Red pens.
Red pens. I did consider blue pencils, but they're horribly dear.
Can't we order it and be green?
I don't have green pens.
No, that's what ordering is.
Thank you. Red pens. Thank you.
Classic, so why not?
Anyone else after a pen?
So is there like a soft copy of this? Or
I don't have a soft copy, I'm sorry.
okay, I'm confused. Thank you.
Pens, pens, pens. Would you like a pen?
Sorry. Just one.
I can see me falling over here. I also have notepads, if anyone would like a notepad. Notepads? No? Everyone's cool? All right, that might change. Okay, so I have a series of standard things that I like to tell people when I do these tutorials that will, well, they're what I call how to write good. So I'm going to go through these in more detail as we start writing. Oh, did you take my colour one? I might hang on to that one. There you go. You want to write good? You probably already can write good. I might actually get you to just take one and pass them around. It's probably easier. Take less time. I wrote them. I got them out of my head. It was a bit painful. It can be sometimes.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, there's piles going around. There should be one coming back.
It's going to write well.
Yeah, I know. I did that. I did that on purpose, believe it or not. I did it just to see who'd get frustrated by it. Okay, so the idea of this is, first of all, I want to just quickly run through the tips that are on the sheet in front of you. Just talk briefly about the way I approach this stuff and the reason why I've chosen this as the most important thing. These are the things that I look for when I'm editing. I believe they round out fairly well so that you will catch most glaring errors by following these. Feel free to add your own, feel free to contribute, feel free to tell me I'm wrong or not good. Okay, so I'm going to briefly go through these. That should take hopefully until 4:30. Then we're going to actually start writing, and I want you to actually do some hard work so I can sit down for a while. Okay, so first of all, get organised. I've touched on this. We were talking about information planning. We see that it takes 10% of the project. That's a lot. That's because it's important. Purpose, audience, delivery. Every single thing you write, I don't care if it's a letter to your boss. I don't care if it's a text message, Twitter, whatever. Think about this. Purpose, audience, delivery. Who are you talking? Who are you talking to? Why are you talking to them? And how are they going to receive that information? In terms of scheduling, if you're writing something large, you've got a deadline. Writing to a deadline is a really good idea, even if it's just a self-imposed deadline, because if you have a deadline, you at least try to hit it. Even if you don't hit it, you will have had time to sort of prepare your excuses anyway. The idea is if you have a deadline, you've got a goal to work towards. I'm sure we've all been in sessions with our workplaces where they talk about goal setting. We talk about goal setting, we talk about timely and accurate and all that kind of stuff. And achievable. There's an acronym for that and I can't remember what it is. SMART, that's it, SMART goals. I can't remember them all. That's obviously how good I am. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and timely. There you go. Thank you, you got me started. Okay, so yeah, it's exactly the same thing. It's about goal setting. If you just go, oh yeah, I'll write a book for that, you're never going to do it. Seriously? If you're serious about writing something and you're writing it well, give yourself a deadline. Work out how you're going to approach this. How are you going to go? The waterfall model with the percentages is a great way to plan, even if you're not working with another engineering team or anything like that. So say what you mean. Choose your voice. No, choose your voice, not say what you mean. Get organised, choose your voice on the top of the other column. So it's all about, again, knowing your audience. Who's going to be reading it? If you're writing a manual for system admins, you're probably going to be writing at a different level to if you're writing a recipe for kids. Extreme example. Think about who's going to be approaching it. Think about how you're going to talk to them. If you're writing a manual for a first-person shooter, you might want to get a bit tongue-in-cheek, you might want to get a bit fun and funky if that's the tone of the game that you're writing for. If you're writing an enterprise-level deployment guide, you probably want to remove your tongue from your cheek and be a little more formal. By the way, formal does not mean long words. I'll come back to that. Say what you mean. If you want to warn people that there are flying toasters, say warning flying toasters. Don't say, there may be airborne bread heating apparatus or something like that, because I actually have a really good graphic that goes with that one, the picture of a flying toaster, but I'm not using a slide deck, so I can't share that with you, unfortunately. But I don't say things like there may be a risk that, there's a possibility that, in some cases there is a chance that. You can say sometimes, no one's going to kill you for it, even if you are writing enterprise level documentation. I stand here as proof that you can write enterprise level documentation using words like sometimes and not be killed by your boss. Another one that we use a lot, especially in, sorry?
By whom then?
I will actually come back to talking about being pretentious, which probably falls into that category better. Another thing we use in IT a lot is deploying. We deploy everything. We deploy servers, we deploy software, we deploy networks, we deploy workstations, we deploy lunch to the staff, we deploy everything. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It may once have meant something, but it doesn't anymore. The word deploy is almost completely meaningless in IT now. Tell them what you're doing. If you're installing, if you're distributing, if you're whatever, installing lunch into the, whatever you're doing, use a word that's actually going to be appropriate. Deploying is just way too vague and ambiguous. And there's lots of words that we use like that in IT. We just use them too much. Via is another one. We use via a lot. We talk about doing things via the network and doing things via the internet and doing things via the protocol and all the rest. Say what you're actually doing, because it makes a lot more sense. Use short sentences. In tech writing, we need to be somewhere in between 15 and 20 words a sentence. If your audience will be reading it on a screen, as they will be most of the time these days, keep it 10 to 15. That's not to say you should die if you use a 21-word sentence. It just means you should mix it up a little. Feel free to use a 3 to 5-word sentence, follow it up by a 25-word sentence. That's cool. It's actually a really good thing because it helps hold your audience. It holds their interest because your writing isn't so bland. But on average, you want to head for about the 15 to 20 word mark. Or 10 to 15 if you're on a screen. You're not at uni. This is, I think I call it don't be pretentious on the handout. Who has been to uni? Just about everybody? Okay, when you're at uni, what happens? Your lecturer says, okay, you need to write a 5,000 word article, it needs to be handed in next Wednesday. So you sit down and you realise you've got about 2,000 words of article that you need to say, and then you have to find 3,000 words of filler. Right? We will write up to a word limit when we're in uni, and this is why academic writing exists. It's because it has long words, fancy words, so that you can hand it into your lecturer and you can say, look what I did, I wrote this fantastic thing and I know all these wonderful words and aren't I clever? Because that's the whole point of being at uni, is telling people how clever you are. We don't need to tell people how clever we are. Our audience will very rarely be reading our stuff and going, oh my goodness, this Lana Brindley, she's so smart. She has the best vocabulary I've ever seen. I'm not out to impress people with my use of the English language. Yes, I know lots of words. I don't have to use them all. It's okay to keep some of them for the private. Good examples of pretentious language. That's the other thing about pretentious language is you quite often use words that you don't use very often. You will use it You know, it might be a word that you've only ever seen in print. You might not know how to pronounce it. And quite often, if you don't know how to pronounce it, it probably means you don't quite understand the more subtle meaning as well. And I've had some really good ones come out. One of them was enumerated. This one document kept on using the word enumerated. What he actually meant was that he had discovered or found something. So he would talk about the fact that he had enumerated so many packages on a system. And so I'm pretty sure he didn't actually count them. I'm pretty sure you just saw a list of them. Or, you know, you ls minus l or whatever and saw them all. I'm pretty sure you didn't actually count them. Utilising, we use utilising all the time. There's nothing wrong with it. The word is absolutely correct. It's just longer than it needs to be. Using is fine. Utilising should, as far as I'm concerned, be considered an archaic word.
In a lot of cases, though, I find there are like subtle differences between like words or something that might think are pretentious and the words they want me to use. It's like meaning gets lost, and you end up with things like what you were saying before that deploy doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Microsoft particularly.
All IT, I wouldn't even, I mean, you know, yeah, okay, I work for an open source company, I hate Microsoft as well as everyone else. Microsoft aren't the only, certainly aren't the only ones. They're all IT is bad. I don't think I've ever read an IT document that didn't have utilising, via, or deploy in it.
What I mean is sort of like making up new dumbed down words
Yep.
where the meaning isn't quite the same as like technically correct word, and therefore the other word loses its meaning.
Perfect example, deprecated. We use the word deprecated all the time. It doesn't mean end of life. it means talking down to somebody. Slightly different meaning. Another one is instantiate. The first time when I started working on cloud documentation, I first came across the word instantiate, which was about instantiating a VM instance. I'm like, but instantiate has a real meaning. The real meaning of instantiate, does anyone know? Okay, the real meaning of instantiate is if you're trying to provide an example or you're trying to explain something, if you provide a physical, hard example, you bring something in and you demonstrate the actual thing rather than using a, well, what's the right word? Instead of sort of I'm finding it difficult to describe now.
We can't agree that we have certain terms that have a generic meaning and then it's being overloaded with another specific meaning.
Yeah.
I can picture a boot sector as being something I cut out of footwear.
Exactly.
That's not exactly what it is in our
No, but that's different. Because what you're doing there is you're taking the word boot, which has a standard meaning in IT, and you're taking the word sector, which has a standard meaning in IT, and you're putting those two words together. What I'm talking about is where you take a word like instantiate that has a real dictionary meaning in the real world and changing that meaning.
Just means the dictionary hasn't caught up yet.
Yeah. And look, English is a living language. English is a living language, and yes, it will constantly change.
Yeah, but that argument doesn't hold. Take another example, bootstrap. So
Yeah, that's again
simple standard English meaning for bootstrap, and
Yeah.
IT means something completely
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
The word instantiate, isn't that somewhat appropriate? I mean, you make a specific example of a general class.
Sort of. I'm pretty sure that's where the meaning has come from. It really does. To me, it means something closer to install, the way, or begin, start.
But the meaning, the earlier
Yeah, create.
meaning is we're not creating just another random thing. We're creating, say for example, a VM. We're creating a VM, which is an instance of that template.
Yeah, and it's because a word didn't exist for it. So we took a word from language, as I said, living language. We take a word from language and we change it slightly. It's very disconcerting when you come across into something and I saw the word instantiate and I'm like, but that has a real meaning that's different to this, and I thought it must have been like a typo for an installation or something. Obviously you have to go and do your research in that situation.
It's different. We have the idea of an instance. This is an instance, that is an instance. So instantiate therefore sort of flows from that.
It does. You can see how it.
To audience, because it depends on who you're working with as to how they will take
Exactly.
the language.
Exactly.
Because, well, teaching, for instance, has a different meaning on much language.
And I mean, yes.
I'm not sure if my point was clear, but what I meant was like instantiate sounds pretentious, and somebody might say, well, why don't you just say make?
All right.
Yeah, let's call it make. And it's like, no, it's a...
No, and that one, like the gentleman here in the front said, that's audience. If your audience is sysadmins, they deal with VMs all day long, they instantiate things, and that is the word we use. Absolutely. Use the word, I mean, audience has to come first, every time. That's why we do this, and that's why I'm going to keep on pointing to it. So yes, don't use pretentious words unless the pretentious word is the right word to use. So maybe I should qualify that. I think the next one is avoid passive voice, which I might come back to and do last, because there's a bit to...
Awesome.
Sorry?
Everything's awesome.
Everything's awesome. The same guy who's stressing out about the 2-week cycles. He wants to put a ban on the word awesome in the office, which means every time I see him, I just use the word awesome more. Cut out the craft. Edit with a knife. When you go through an editing pass, if you do a full pass on your document, it should reduce in length by about 20%. Yes? So now you do another pass and it reduces by another 20%. Every pass you do should drop the length. It should get shorter. If your document's getting longer with every editing pass, you didn't do your planning very well.
And eventually you have the document.
And well, yeah, if you do 5 editing passes, it disappears, doesn't it?
No. 0.8
It's like percentage points.
Oh, what? This is why I'm a writer. The example I like to use here is my daughter got a toy from McDonald's some time ago now. I kept the packet for a while so I could demonstrate it. It was a My Little Pony comb thing. It was a silly thing for the My Little Pony hair, to comb the manes on them. And it called itself a comb accessory. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't wake up in the morning and comb my hair with a comb accessory. Comb is fine. This word accessory is completely superfluous. We don't need it. Another one, I've got some examples here. Weather event. We don't have weather events. We just have weather. That's fine. Yes, hair product. Emergency situation. Basic fundamentals. You see this stuff all the time. You see these word pairs that come together, and you just need one of them, generally. Pick the most appropriate one. Read what you write. I have several strategies that I use for editing. The first one I like to use is to walk away, because it's always nice to walk away when you finish writing something. Even if you don't have the time to walk away for several days, walk away, make yourself a cup of coffee, whatever, go and have a walk around the street, come back, give it some time, give your head a chance to think about something else, because otherwise you're going to read what you think is there and not what is actually there. And that's how you don't pick up things like if you've got a "the" on the end of the line, you've got another one at the start of the line, you'll never see those if you're tired. Read it out loud. I have a big Beatles poster on my office wall. I read all my stuff to my Beatles. John Lennon gives me funny looks occasionally, but I think that's just John Lennon though. And the other one is to read things backwards. If you've got a long document, obviously it's difficult to read it backwards, but do read it out of order, at least. Even if you read it by sentence order backwards or by paragraph order backwards, it will help. With short text, if you're proofreading your business cards, for example, read the words backwards, read the last word first. Perfect example, the one I like to use for this is the Canberra Bus Company. Have anyone heard this story? No, Canberra Bus Company had an ad in the Yellow Pages probably 10 years ago now, advertising school executions. There probably is, actually. I don't know if you'd be advertising in the Yellow Pages, though. So I did want to talk briefly about passive voice. Every writer ever will tell you not to write in the passive voice. I'm going to buck that trend. I'm going to say it's okay to write in passive voice sometimes. The best trick, the best tool I can give you to do with that is think about it. If you can tell that it's passive voice, change it. And if you can't tell whether it's passive voice or not, leave it be.
I have a good style rule for that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's if emphasis always goes last to an English reader, something that is at the end of the sentence always sticks with them more intensively than something that's at the beginning of the sentence.
True.
So if you want to structure the sentence such that you've got the important thing last, and the only way you can do that is by using passive voice, then do.
Yep. To an extent, I think I have a feeling that it fall down sometimes.
Exceptions to every rule.
Yes, I should have mentioned that right at the beginning. There are exceptions to all these rules as well. I basically say if you can spot it, change it. If it feels uncomfortable, whatever. There are really good reasons to use passive voice, and I'm pretty certain the Society of Technical Writers will kick me out if they ever hear me say this. There are good reasons to use passive voice. We use passive voice a lot in technical writing, mostly because we don't always know who the actor is. The actor can sometimes be you, but we'll end up sometimes in a case with tech writing where we're going, you should do this, you should do that, you should do something else, and it gets a little boring and repetitive. So passive voice is quite often the answer to that. For those who need help with passive voice, oh, it's on there, I won't write it up. So basically the subject acts on the object. The cat sat on the mat, clearly. If you turn it around, make it backwards, then it becomes passive. The mat was sat on by the cat. So you end up with these extra words in there. It becomes longer, for starters, and all of a sudden the actor isn't as important. So the mat could be sat on, and we could completely fail to mention who actually did the action. So that's the problem with passive voice, is we leave the actor out. Sometimes though, that's what we want. There are good legal reasons to leave actors out, quite a lot of the time too. I think my tablet's finally died. Never mind. So that's passive voice. Yeah, if you can't tell it's passive, leave it be. That's really it. We use a lot of complicated sentences, aren't as simple as actors and acted on and that kind of stuff. It can be hard to parse the sentence sometimes. If it's difficult to parse, if it sounds all right to you, just leave the thing. Seriously, it's not that bad. Okay, so what I want you to do is start editing. We have about an hour, is that correct?
Yeah, about that.
About that. I think we're going till about 4:30. So I would like you to spend, say, 10 to 15 minutes on planning. Actually, less than that. Make it 5 to 10 minutes on planning. A little bit of time on content spec. We don't need to worry too much about that because we're editing, not actually writing. A couple of minutes on that, and then spend most of the time writing. Then at the end, we'll come back and discuss what you found. For those of you who are working off one of my documents, it's a severely anonymized document that came across my desk some time ago. All the errors in it are as they came to me. I have changed names to protect the innocent. So, go. Start yelling out questions.
The document you gave us, is it actually just the one page?
Yes, just one page.
Some of the pages look different.
Yeah, there are 3 different pages, but they're all single page.
Yeah, that's okay, I just want to check.
Yeah, that's cool. Yes? Oh. Were there any extra cheat sheets? I'm going to say there should be extras. Sorry.
Kind of went up on the other side.
Yeah.
I promise I'll do my editing.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, they all say that. You off to see V-Dale?
I just want to check it out quickly.
Yeah, it's okay.
I might be back if it turns out it's real dumb compared to the
It's V-Dale, come on. I do have a couple of style guides and a dictionary down here. Yes?
So for people who are a bit overwhelmed and don't really know where to start,
Yep.
can I sit with you for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
This has the thing of being an actual real abstract for a conference.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
I should turn this off. Hey. Okay, so recommendations for the purposes of the recording. Number 1, Collins Dictionary for Writers and Editors by Martin Manser, M-A-N-S-E-R. For style, for Australian English, we've got the Australian Government Style Guide, also known as Style Manual, published by the Australian Government. And the Chicago Manual of Style. The one I have here is the 16th edition, the 15th edition is all in orange. They're more or less the same, even though I bought both. So that's for American English. If you're writing American English, the APA guide can also be good. Industry style guides, the Sun Microsystems one called Read Me First is good. Don't recommend you do read it first, but it's a good style guide all the same. The Microsoft one, which I'm pretty sure is just called the Microsoft Manual of Style, because we're really original. Incidentally, Red Hat's also working on open sourcing their own internal style guide. You're looking at one of the main project maintainers. Yay! So the Red Hat style guide should be available for reviewing and editing and contributing before too long through the Fedora project, which would be great. So if you're interested in that, definitely grab a business card and get on to me and I will send you information because it's all happening right now. In terms of dictionaries, if you, I'm not partial to any one particular, At work, for some really odd reason, we tend to use the American Heritage Dictionary, which is odd. The American Heritage has a strange background. It's more or less developed by committee. You can actually go to the American Heritage Dictionary website and submit words to be added to the dictionary, and then the committee will either choose to do that or not. How you get on to the American Heritage Dictionary Committee, I have no idea. I know originally it was really just a bunch of sort of eminent people in society who decided that they wanted English to be a certain way. So I don't really know why we chose the American Heritage Dictionary. That's the one we use for work, so that's the one I've got. Obviously for Australian English, Macquarie. There's not really any argument there. I do have a copy of Eat, Shoots and Leaves here. I actually don't like it very much. I find Lynn Truss to be way too prescriptive. But she's made a good career out of it and she's gotten really rich, so hey.
I thought it was intended for adolescents who are just getting into technical writing and therefore had to be given a lot more firm guidelines on how to do things without going into horrible grammar.
I think there is definitely, sorry, I've seen you. I think there is definitely value in being prescriptive in some circumstances. Lynn Truss is very prescriptive, and I understand that. I mean, that's obviously the way she wanted to do it, and that's fine.
The technical version is very good.
Oh, is it? I haven't seen it.
It's just a series of sentences that she uses in her books, illustrated with the literal, or the, you know, in that one there's
a bit more explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to get a copy of the picture book version for my daughter.
There's the panda aiming a bow and arrow.
Yeah. Cool. So up the back.
I was just going to say, I highly recommend Strunk and White's Elements of Style.
Absolutely. If you're writing in, if you're writing in GB English, definitely Strunk and White. Strunk and White gets a bit prescriptive in strange ways too. Strunk and White actually, it's a good exercise if you've got a spare weekend to go through Strunk and White and work out how many times they break their own rules. Because they do, several times. My personal favourite in terms of writing advice obviously comes from George Orwell, Politics in the English Language. It's published in 1946, I think. He has a series of 4 or 5 guidelines, and I think it sums up the issue I have with Lynn Truss as well. The final guideline from Orwell is do all of these before committing a great sin. So basically, if you're going to break a rule, at least know why you're breaking the rule and what you're doing. And if it sounds really, truly abysmal to write it correctly, go ahead and write it incorrectly. I don't think any of these, there are a lot of grammar rules and there are a lot of grammar Nazis out there who are going to pounce on you for just about everything. And I really think break it knowingly. And by all means, if it sounds better, write it that way. English is a living language, I've already said that. It will change, it will adapt, and over time you'll find that your children speak a different language to what we do. And we speak a different language to what our parents do, and obviously no one speaks like Shakespeare anymore. So, much as that'd kind of be cool. But yeah, I'm all for prescriptive guides because sometimes what you need is just a quick fix to say, hey, do I put an apostrophe here or not? Do I put a hyphen here or not? What is the correct way of formatting this list? And yeah, but at the same time, that's why I have so many books, is because I like to just not check one. I like to see how everyone does it. And it's interesting seeing the differences between US English and UK English. Or Australian English. And again, finding those little things like the Department of Health and Ageing where they've broken their own rule. Strunk and White break their own rule all the time. He's got so many flowery sentences in that book, it's incredible. But he was the one who was widely accepted as having coined the don't use more words than you need rule. Don't use needless words, that's it. Yes. So I knew it was in there. Sorry, question?
I was just going to say, can you define flowery sentence? I feel like I have a floaty definition of it.
Anything that says uses more words than it needs to.
Okay, just that.
Yeah, and again, like using those words, like utilising. That's what I would consider as flowery.
One of the design principles, if you can get rid of it and it still works, get rid of it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. for the record. That was, if you can get rid of it and it still works, get rid of it. And I've said it to a couple of people individually here. Look at each sentence, figure out what it's trying to say, then say that.
Yeah, that's not a hard rule though, because if you take the safety out of a firearm, then the firearm still works.
Well, yeah, but we're not talking about physical objects.
A firearm, if your spec is safety, then
True.
it doesn't work without safety.
The safety is there, it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
And I guess you can take that back to writing as well.
The flip side of it is there are guns that have no safety because their trigger pull is so heavy. Seriously, there were guns that they designed the safety mechanism out because you need to use so much pressure on the trigger, you're not going to do it accidentally.
Not going to do it accidentally.
So they redesigned the safety. They integrated the safety. But
They discovered their safety was redundant.
Exactly. it's still a safe weapon with the safety mechanism, the explicit quickness.
Sorry, this question?
I was just going to say though, it can be hard to remove words because, as was in the keynote this morning, our brains fill in space. We know what we're talking about, so we can remove the words. Think, yeah, I know what that is.
But that's solved by not just looking at it and saying, is that word necessary? Because the way the sentence is formed, that word probably is necessary. If you actually think about what that sentence is trying to say, you've actually got to take it away from the wording that's used and go, okay, what is that? What is the point? Explain it to a friend. I'm sure it's happened to all of us where we've had someone come up and say, so I'm trying to write this thing and I want to say X, Y, Z. How should I say that? And I go, well, just like you just did. Because that's the way we talk, that's the way we communicate. If that's the way that makes sense in speaking, it will probably make sense in writing as well. So there is a much closer link between speaking and writing than people like to think. We tend to, when we do speak, we tend to speak with punctuation. You don't notice it there all the time, but we do. We have those little pauses. We have little pauses, we take a breath and have a longer pause. We fracture our speeches into organised statements. We'll start off at the beginning and then tell the story and build on that over time. It's exactly the same way we write. Because it still gets into the audience's head in one way or another. You've still got to, it's exactly what Jacinta was saying in her talk about having to build scaffolding. You have to build the beginnings of the story before you can build the next part. And it's the same with teaching people through documentation. In fact, if any of you missed Jacinta's talk, I suggest you go and find the stream because it was awesome. And I'm not saying that just because she's here. I was sitting in it and watching and thinking, oh, this is like the building blocks for what I want to talk about. It's so cool that it came just before mine. So if you did miss Jacinta's talk, definitely go and find the recording because it was awesome. Or vote for her and we'll watch her again on Friday. That'd be pretty awesome, actually. You're going to be here on Friday, aren't you? We'll make you redo the talk. Everybody vote for Jacinta's talk. So it's 5:05. We still have heaps of time if people want to keep on working. I'm here to answer questions. If you do feel totally bored, your brain's turned to mush, you're more than welcome to head off and have a beer. But I'm definitely happy to continue talking. No, I'm poor. I'm a writer, remember? Yes.
We have a quick question.
Yeah.
Style question.
A style question. Woohoo, my favourite.
So, who took this?
I'm going to just turn this off. Hold on.